Hello, everyone. Welcome to Family Restoration and Healing Center's series, COVID-19 Coping Tips. I'm Joyce Jones. Today's topic is post-pandemic mental health. Where are we now? What helps? I'm joined by Tamia Pleasance, a licensed clinical professional counselor who is the owner and lead therapist with Nilu Therapeutic Solutions. She is also a board-approved supervisor for Family Restoration and Healing Center. I'm also joined by Steve Osterhout, a licensed clinical social worker, counselor with Safe Harbor Christian Counseling. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
We're talking today about post-pandemic mental health. It has been a year since the lockdowns began. What do we know about people's mental health state? Tamia, tell us a little bit about what are some of the major issues people are dealing with.
Sure. I am seeing a huge influx in people, anxiety going up. I'm just not sure what's next. A lot of times there's so much conflicting information that's going on, whether it be with like government, whether it be with, what's safe to go to, what's not safe to go to, for those that have school age children in the home. Are we sending our kids to school? Are we still doing Zoom school? So there's just a lot of back and forth with people's jobs. Can I still telework? Am I now expected to come in? Like, what does that mean? So a lot of people's anxiety is still like really high, even a year after, so we've been using this buzzword, the new norm. And I don't know if most people have found that for themselves. They've been really trying hard to find a new norm, but I think when you think you're going to hit the stride, there's a new piece of information or something else changes. And so you're not able to, go forward as planned. And so people's anxiety, I think, are just really, really high. People are really overwhelmed. Things are really inconsistent. And so that's what I find. Like, people are just looking for something that is going to be consistent, something that is solid and steady to look forward to. That's what I think, are coming in a lot of times for services.
Okay, and Steve, you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with Tamia. It's, I was actually looking at article just this morning, as a matter of fact, and the CDC is tracking a lot of things, including the impact that COVID-19 has had on our mental health. And they would agree that there's been statistically an increase in anxiety. There's been an increase in depression. There's been an increase in substance abuse. There's been an increase in suicidality. So this pandemic has taken its toll in so many different ways. So absolutely, the cumulative effects after dealing with this for a year are still in the process of kind of showing themselves to us and getting an idea of what we're going to be dealing with in the months to come.
Right. And yeah, the anxiety levels, I understand that that's a big issue that people are dealing with. How are folks coping with that anxiety and the stress? What works when things are, when they're just not in your control? What works?
That's a great question. And I think one of the amazing things about spending time with people in a clinical setting is you see the resilience that people have and the creativity that individuals bring to finding solutions to difficult problems. Mm-hmm. I've watched people develop new hobbies. They maybe have more time, maybe do something they've always wanted to do, and now they can, or they're giving themselves permission to do certain things that maybe in the past they wouldn't have. So I've also seen people, we were just talking about technology a moment ago, and we've all had to learn how to embrace technology. And some of us aren't so young, so embracing technology is really, really daunting. But watched a lot of people overcome the fears and the hesitancy, because it's just been so important to be able to find ways to connect with other people, to go to church, to do family outings, to spend time with a friend. And while we're all very tired of Zoom, even though we're thankful to do that right this moment, that's what we've had to use to keep that connectedness and that attachment. So it's been really inspiring to watch people overcome these, maybe hesitancies, because they need to survive. We all need to survive, and we're finding ways to do that. We're pretty resilient people. So.
Yeah. And so during the acute phase, there was pandemic stress, the social distancing, reduced access to services, economic stress. After the pandemic, many will face the consequences of all of that, of the pandemic stress, prolonged anxiety, possible violence exposure, and economic recession. There's so much that's going on at this time. So to me, what are the warning signs that it's time to get help to cope with all of this, to cope with the stress and the anxiety?
I think that there's these internal cues, right? Like sometimes we just have this kind of gut feeling that something is off, right? Like I am having a harder time with, when that alarm goes off, wanting to get out of bed. I'm having a harder time, connecting with the things that I normally wouldn't have an issue with connecting, right? I'm more tired. I'm fatigued, right? Like I'm exhausted, but I haven't really done a whole lot of exertion throughout the day. I am relying on, what Steve mentioned before, like some of those habits that may be under normal circumstances could be more balanced. So I am relying on snacks a lot more. I am, really reaching for those comfort things that help me to numb. But then that becomes a way to just completely disconnect, right, from my family. So I'm just in front of the TV with Netflix and I got my snacks and I don't want to be bothered. And when those types of things start to become your daily norm, then I think that is a clear sign that something is off, right? We need a check. I think also, when I talk to different people, when I talk to clients, I let them know that just like our cell phone, just like our computers, we need time to charge, and we need time to, refuel. And depending on what we plug into is going to help, or sometimes hurt, right? So if we're super plugged into, foods that we know aren't as healthy, if we're plugged into, again, those numbing things, I'm just going to play video games for the next 8 hours, right? Like, and sometimes it is with substances, right? Especially because for adults, right, 21 and over, alcohol is legal, right? So, they're not breaking the law or doing anything. So there is this now over-reliance. There's medical marijuana, right? So states are, loosening up the rules on marijuana. So a lot of times people are flooding to those resources, right? In hopes to not have to feel that anxiety, that depression, that sadness that, just living in this time can sometimes bring. And so I think when you start to see that there's an over reliance on those things, or that's the goal, right? I wake up and the only thing that's on my mind is, where can I numb? Right? Well, how can I disconnect? Then that's a clear sign that something is off, right? Steve mentioned we all want to survive in the healthiest, or not the healthiest, but in the most painless way possible.
Yes.
Right? But painless doesn't equate to healthiest.
Right.
And so when your survival methods are reliant more on, things that aren't as healthy, then I think that that's a clear sign that I might need a little bit of help.
And are some of those signs a bit different between adults and kids? I know you mentioned some examples Some may go to the video games. Some may eat. For kid, is there any differences? And Steve, let us know if there's any specific differences between the two.
Yeah, sure. Kids are in some ways, like little adults sometimes, in some ways are not at all. So I think there's some overlap. What I see a lot of times, especially, and even with kids, different ages, of course, impact how a child might be showing signs of distress. I know many high schoolers tend to isolate anyway, but what I've noticed is this to the nth degree during COVID. Sometimes I think parents wonder if they still have a high schooler at home, and because a high schooler is in the bedroom all the time. And so I think that isolation, which again is probably a way to numb, like Tamia was talking about, but when it becomes more and more extreme, I think that's something to be concerned about. And I think with younger children, anxiety sometimes manifests in different ways. And again, it varies from child to child, but a child may be, almost like regress emotionally, may seem a little bit more clingy or needy or whiny, or all those things that are, I don't know, I'll speak for myself, can be kind of irritating. It's like, oh, please just stop. But it may be an indication that that child is really having a tough time, but just doesn't know how to find the words to explain the difficulty he or she might be having. So things to kind of watch for, but there's some similarities to adults as well. So.
Oh, that's good. I think there are some things that people in our community around us that can do to help and to help identify those things. What are some of the things businesses and churches and families can do to support post-pandemic mental health? Tamia, do you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, sure. I think with that creativity, that Steve was speaking about before, I think there is a willingness to connect in a different way. And so I think what local businesses, local churches, again, local, really looking at the community that is literally right outside of your door. I think there's more of a willingness to be partners, right? And how can we help each other? Whereas maybe before the pandemic, it was definitely like, I got my blinders on. This is my lane. I'm the restaurant. I'm the church. I'm the mental health. I'm the this. I'm the that. And now it's kind of blurred, right? Because we're all seeing each other, I think, a little bit differently. By when I say differently, I think more human, right? Like you're not just the business owner. You're not just the minister or the pastor at your church. Like you're a person. And I think the more that we tap into being able to see each other as like real people, then I think there is more of a willingness to connect. Hey, how can I help you? And here's how you can help me. I think we're more able or more willing to really listen to each other's needs, right? Especially with some of the social climate or the political climate that's going on, I think a lot of us are ready to have different types of conversations to really meet, at the table and say, okay, so yeah, there've been mistakes on both sides. How can we as a community start to heal that, right? I want to know what you have to say, and I'm hoping you want to hear what I have to say, and then let's relate and let's grow from there. And so I think that that's a great starting point, is just coming outside, socially distance, of course, and being able to say, hey, I have a need. Does anybody, is there anybody able to help meet this need? And here are my resources. Is there anybody that's in need of these resources? And, no longer assuming, right, that because I do this, then this is the only thing that I can offer, or this is the only thing that I'm willing to receive. But like Steve was saying, I think we are all have we want to connect, and we know that we have to tap into our creativity in order to do that safely. But I think there's such a willingness to do that now, because we are forced to say, how can we do this in a safe way, but still feel like we're here for each other? I think that's a great starting point for what, that local community can do.
Yeah. And thinking about the faith based organizations, faith leaders and churches and youth groups. You're part of a Christian counseling organization, Steve. Could you give us some tips for those groups and how they could support the people in their community?
Yeah, I love what Tamia is saying, because it's really, I think we're eager for community right now. So there's these beautiful opportunities that exist within this context of having, been isolated for a year now. And I think people are eager for maybe a new narrative, a new dialogue. I'm certainly hopeful for that. But the one thing I really want to emphasize that's so, so important, and I appeal to churches and business groups, any leadership, unfortunately, there's still a stigma about mental health. There's still a stigma that, that if you're struggling with depression, there's something wrong with you. There's still a stigma. You go to see a counselor, you're on medications, and we really need to, as I would call in my business, reframe that, and normalize the reality that this is part of being human. And I think the louder we can share that message with people, then people are going to be more inclined when they are struggling to actually take that step to get some help. But if people are feeling like, they're that shame and so on because they're struggling with depression or anxiety, they're going to be hesitant to take that step and they're going to be more isolated. So my biggest appeal to leadership, whether it's church or business or whatever it may be, community, is to help in that journey of destigmatizing mental health issues.
Absolutely. I love that, destigmatizing this, because the church, our other organizations in the community, if they come together and have that same message, I'm sure it would make a big difference. And speaking about, just resources for people, those that are listening, just want to mention that there's SAMHSA's National Helpline. You can call 1-800-662-HELP if you need help. That's 1-800-662-HELP, the SAMHSA's National Helpline. Are there any other tips or, closing remarks that you both have for our audience? Tamia, I'll start with you.
Sure. One of my hashtags on social media is "It's okay to get help." Right? Like it's just that simple. It's okay to get help. Help doesn't mean that you are sick or you have this chronic illness. Sometimes just, depending on where we are, we just need help. Right? I have a toddler and she's learning new words, and one of those words is help. And so she will look at me and she will point to something and just say help. Right? And I don't go, now you should know how to get that on your own. Or, if you pray about it, then maybe God will give you a way in order to help yourself. Right? No, I just help. Mm-hmm. And I think that you'll find that when you just open your mouth and ask, that most people will just help.
Yes.
And so it is okay to get help.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Steve?
Yeah, I just, again, I'll echo that. It's, most counselors, we're actually really nice people, and, we're just people like everybody else. We have an interest in helping people, and we also have some specialized training that hopefully equips us to do that well. I tell people all the time that I'm glad the great counselor shows up, because otherwise I'd be in big trouble. But it's at the same time, we really have a passion for being in that place of helping people engage in a process that improves life, that improves circumstance, that helps people get to a place of contentment regardless of the circumstances of life. And so to be a part of that as counselors, it's a great privilege. But I just love forums like this, that can really encourage people, that there is hope out there. There is help out there. There are people who genuinely care. And, all we need to do, again, is create that community of care and help people through the process of trying to figure out how to deal with post-pandemic life, as we try, again, figure out this new normal, whatever it's going to be. We're all in this together, and together we're going to make it.
Absolutely. I like that. And that is the key. We're all in this together. Thank you both for today. I truly appreciate you. We have learned so much. We've learned how to cope with stress. We've learned that what businesses and churches, our community, our families can do to help support our post-pandemic mental health. We talked about signs for when it's time to reach out to someone. We talked about the signs that we could see in someone, that it's time for them to reach out for help. So I thank you. I thank you both. I think, thanks to our experts from Safe Harbor and Nilu Therapeutics for the links to these counseling resources, to additional resources, to our COVID-19 coping resources. Do reach out to and visit our website at 360wholeness.org and go to our COVID-19 coping tips page. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.